Last week, we talked about how you as a high school basketball player could increase your basketball IQ by getting better at spotting momentum shifts during a basketball game. And during that chat, we also touched on tempo. And tempo is one of those things that high IQ basketball players understand really well. So today, I'm going to share who benefits from a fast tempo versus a slow tempo. Let's jump in and discuss. Welcome back to Hard Smart Together. I'm Coach Dave. I'm here every week to help basketball players become the smart, confident players that coaches love. So we have covered tempo in past episodes, but it's a really important topic, okay? It's really important if you want to be one of those high IQ basketball players. You really need to understand tempo and its effects on the game of basketball. And the first step in understanding the effects it has on a game or during a game is understanding what tempo is. And there's so many misconceptions out there about what tempo, when it relates to a basketball game, is. Tempo is not how fast you're running up and down the floor. Tempo is not how fast you're dribbling. Tempo is not how fast you're pushing the ball up the floor. Tempo is simply how many possessions there are in a given time frame. And a lot of times you're talking about a fast tempo game, so the time frame might be over the course of an entire game, okay, or a slow tempo game, versus maybe you're talking about the tempo within a quarter or any period of time. So typically when we talk about tempo, we're talking about an entire game, but it could be just a quarter, a half, a certain period of time during the game. Was it a fast tempo versus a slow tempo? And when you start to understand who benefits from a fast tempo versus a slow tempo and why, that's when you start to become that higher IQ player who can recognize the shifts in not just momentum that we talked about last week, but the shifts in tempo, and actually start to control the shifts in tempo to benefit you and your team. So that's what I want to talk about today, is who benefits from a fast tempo game versus a slow tempo game, and why. Now, before I jump into that, I always like to give you a free gift just for listening in, just for watching today. So if you haven't already downloaded the 8 intangible skills coaches love to see in players, this is a checklist with some ways to really show off those skills that are really, they'll make you stand out on and off the basketball court. And so if you haven't already downloaded that, I'll put a link in the description below, or you can simply go to hardsmarttogether.com/intangibles, and I'll be sure to get you that free gift. Okay, so who benefits from a fast team? Who benefits from a fast tempo versus a slow tempo? So first, we're going to talk in generalities. Okay, in general, the better team benefits from a faster tempo game, and the team that's maybe at a bit of a disadvantage, the underdog in that game, benefits from a slower tempo game. Now, why is that? Because the more possessions, since tempo is the number of possessions in a game, the better team, the more possessions they get, the more that their advantage can come out, the more that their advanced skill or their advanced teamwork or whatever the case that makes them the better team always will have an advantage because more possessions gives them more opportunities to shine, okay? Whereas a slower tempo is generally an advantage to the lesser team. And why is that? Because less possessions, anything can happen, right? If you take it to an extreme and you say, okay, we have, a 2-possession game, well, maybe the better team makes a horrible pass. Somebody on the lesser team is cherry picking. They go down, they throw it down, layup, okay? 2 possessions, game's over, 2-0. The lesser team wins. So in general, slower tempos benefit kind of the worst team in the matchup, and faster tempos benefit the better team. And so from that standpoint, there are times during your season that you might be the favorite, you might be the better team, you might be the more skilled team, and then there are other times that you might be the underdog, you might be the worst team, you're playing the best team in the league, whatever the case might be. And so understanding which benefits you in which situation is really important and kind of gives a good overview. Now, we talked about it being tempo doesn't have to just be the same an entire game. It can change based on situations that are going on in the game, right? Within the game. And so like last week, if you didn't watch last week, go back and talk about spotting momentum shifts, because you can change and should change the tempo of the game in order to stop momentum from the other team when that team is on a run. Okay? We talked about what a run was last week. Similarly, you might want a faster tempo game, more possessions when your team is on a run. So tempo doesn't just necessarily have to stay the same across the entire spectrum of the game. It can change based on what's going on in the game and what your team wants to accomplish. Okay? Now, how do you slow down tempo? Okay? There's several ways to slow down tempo. One, you really need to take care of the ball. You need to limit turnovers. Okay? And what does that mean? That means that, maybe you need to, I hate to use the word slow down your play because I want you playing quick, but as John Wooden said, I want you to play quickly, but I don't want you to hurry. So you got to be really conscious of not hurrying on your drives, not hurrying on bringing the ball up the court, not hurrying and making mistakes with bad passes, okay? The second thing is you've got to look for great shots and be really selective and work the ball for a great shot when you're trying to slow down the tempo. You can't take even good shots. Instead of good shots, you need to take great shots. You want layups. You want really uncontested, shots in the lane. You want great shots. And you want to work the offense until you get that great shot when you're slowing the tempo, because the shot, making that bucket is so important to, as we talked about last week, stopping that momentum, okay? And then you need to defend like it's one of the last possessions of the game. Like the game's on the line, you need to play really solid, rock solid half-court defense. This is not the time for overextending, for gambling, for jumping the passing lane and leaving your team, at a disadvantage. Okay? This is not the time to gamble on defense. This is not the time to play hero ball and I'm going to score over 3 players. Okay? You've got to play, when you're slow in the tempo, it's like it's one of those final possessions, both on the offensive end and the defensive end of a game of a tied score. And you can't gamble. You can't take that quick 3 on the break. You can't do those things if you want to slow down the tempo, because it would benefit you at the time. Now, how do you speed up the tempo? Well, kind of the exact opposite, right? So this is the chance to extend your defense a little bit. Okay? Maybe you get out and you pressure and you press and you trap. Okay? Because that's going to turn the ball over more and it's going to increase the possessions and the tempo's going to start going faster, right? This is the time to take maybe a few more risks. Not risks that your coach doesn't want you to take, right? But maybe this is the time to maybe try and get that steal or try and get into the passing lane a little bit more, okay? This is also the time on the offensive end that you don't have to be as choosy, okay? That doesn't mean I want you taking a bunch of bad shots. But, this is the time where you can take some of those good shots versus the great shots. Maybe that 3 on the break, when you want to increase the tempo, and maybe when your team has the momentum and you're on a run, maybe that 3 is the back-breaking shot that really demoralizes the other team. And maybe you're just, you know how you are when you're on a run and everything's dropping? Maybe that 3 on the break is a great time to take it, okay? Because you're on the run, because you're the better team, because you want to increase the tempo. And understanding that difference between, these are the things that we do when we want to speed up the tempo, and these are the things that we want to do when we want to slow down the tempo is really important. And why, right? You're either the better team or you're in a game situation where it just makes sense for a few possessions to slow down the tempo, okay? I would say that what we've been talking about is sorry about that, I should have turned off my ringer, but what we've been talking about is team tempo, game tempo, okay? But you also have your own personal player tempo that you can recognize. And again, when you find yourself turning the ball over, making bad passes, making bad shots, maybe you've cranked up your personal tempo a little bit. Yes, it doesn't equate to necessarily possessions, but I think you kind of have an internal personal tempo. And go back to that saying that John Wooden had. Be quick, but don't hurry, okay? And maybe you found that your personal tempo is hurrying up a little bit. That's causing these mistakes, which then we know is going to cause you a seat on the bench next to the coach, and that's not where you want to be. You want to be in the game. So that's what I've got for you today on tempo. This is really important to understand it. And now combine these last 2 episodes, whether we were talking about momentum shifts, runs, and now tempo of the game. And you can increase, kind of your basketball IQ by watching games, as we talked about last week, and looking at who's tempo, who wants what tempo in the game and why. And maybe is that team making a mistake by increasing the tempo? Is the other team making a mistake by slowing down the tempo? And you can make your judgments there. So that's what I've got for you this week. Hopefully this was helpful. If it was, give me a like, give me a comment below. Love to hear how your season's going so far and if these tips are helping you as a high school basketball player. And until next week, remember to play hard, play smart, and play together. See you next week.